Welcome to the Ground and Pwn Podcast, a weekly show for fans of combat sports, gaming, entertainment, and plenty more. I'm Brian Shea, online content director at Game Informer, joined by Scott Fontana, the New York Post's MMA reporter. We are coming off a pretty low-key UFC event, but we have a much higher profile Bellator card to talk about. Plus, I can finally talk about what I was alluding to having played last week, and that is Pokémon Starlet and Violet. All that, plus it's also Thanksgiving week here in the United States, meaning deals galore. Scott, should we start there?
I definitely want to start there because, I've been trying to figure out what to do with my own money here because, I don't get review codes, I don't do that. I got to spend my own hard-earned cash, Now you're earning your cash by playing the games, of course, but for me, I'm in the same lump as all these other gentlemen and ladies who are listening to our show. So I'm trying to figure out what to do with my money, and I want to know what kind of new games. We've been talking about these all year, but there's some good deals, and I kind of want to buy deals, right? That's why I wait most of the year to buy a lot of my games. Now we're here. I got to figure out what I want. So there's a few games that I've seen deals for, some of which I'm also thinking for other people, not just myself, but that's kind of where I'm at, Brian. That kind of sets the table, I guess.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're going to have plenty to choose from. So I think that you have looked up a couple of deals that are happening, or a few deals that are happening over the next week.
Sure.
And you're going to ask me what is worthwhile and what is not.
That's kind of, I would say what I'm thinking is is this the time to strike, or do you think priority wise as far as other games too? It's kind of I'm looking at these games and maybe it's a good deal, but I'm not going to spend $500 on these games. I got to, prioritize. So
sure,
figure out what's good now, what's worth my time now, what's a good deal now, and then what's worth maybe, wait a little longer. So,
just for reference, I'm bringing up the Game Informer's top scoring reviews of 2022, just so I have a little bit of an extra reference. I mean, I've played a lot of these games. No, that's great. But there's no way in hell I could play all of them.
Of course, yeah.
There's no such thing as the Kaposa of video games where you just watch and play every single thing. It's just not possible with how many games are out there these days.
Look, Kaposa was talking the other day, in the lead up to this weekend, because there was just on the regional scene, especially and around the world, there was just a ton of events. It wasn't just UFC and Bellator. There was one was going on. First off, that was another higher profile show, but there was just event after event after event all over the world, and he was like, "This one might break me."
It was a surprisingly busy weekend.
It was. I mean, it was super busy. That's what he was saying. This is someone who does this every week, and he's saying this is the one that might break him. So that hopefully that's a good frame of reference. But we'll get to MMA later. We're still on the gaming side, of course. So where I'm at, Brian, and I'm gonna throw a couple of games out first because these are the ones that I've been kind of eyeballing all year as potential for this time of year. So I'm going to, hopefully this will put it at okay, which one of these is the one that I really should kind of zone in on and hone in on, I should say, and figure out which one is best for me. So Here they are, sir. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Wait, that was this year or last year?
Last year.
Oh, you know what? I want to focus on this year's game, so I'm actually going to strike that. We're going to pretend I didn't say that.
Strike that from the record.
I am still thinking about that game, though. There are some non-new games that I'm thinking about too, but for simplicity's sake, we're going to focus on this year's crop.
Black Friday is very good for picking up the previous year's biggest games.
It really is, yeah.
If you missed anything, highly recommend checking out some basic tips for Black Friday deals. By the way, or follow Wario64. And follow Cheap Ass Gamer on Twitter for now, but who knows what social media will emerge in the next few weeks. So
Cheap Ass Gamer. I don't know Cheap Ass Gamer. Let me do that.
Cheap Ass Gamer is a website that I think Wario64 used to run social media for them or do social media posts, but now he's kind of gone out on his own, and now we have two sources of amazing deals.
I am following that literally as we speak.
And of course, Wario64 is just phenomenal for either PS5 console restocks or getting amazing deals. Usually it's gaming, but he'll share movie deals and stuff like that as well.
I've been following Wario 64 since way before it became kind of I don't want to say it cool, but before it blew up when all the consoles became hard to find.
Yeah.
Because I remember he only had maybe a couple 100,000 followers at one point, and now I'm sure he's over 1 million.
Is he?
He's got to be close.
I'm looking that up now.
I'll bet you he's real close if he's not.
Good God, he's at 1.1 million.
That's what I'm saying, man. It wasn't that long ago, like just a couple years ago, that he really was not that high up in terms of the number of followers, the high follower count, right?
Yeah, I mean, he certainly provides an amazing service for
100%,
Twitter users.
100%. You know, and sometimes you'll see, like, he'll post things and he'll say hashtag ad, right? So he's you know, it's an ad.
Well, no, he does that, I think, to avoid, because he gets an affiliation. He does it for almost everything now.
Oh, is that what it is?
He has affiliate links.
Oh, okay.
Because it used to be, like, every post now, I believe, has hashtag ad if he's linking to places that you can buy certain games.
Right. Okay. I understand now.
Just to avoid FTC violations.
Sure. No, and I mean, wise way to do it, of course.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
an easy
okay.
three characters on Twitter. Doesn't take up a whole lot of space and just lets him post affiliate links.
And honestly, just as a super great resource if you're looking for deals on literally anything at any time of the year. I always thought he was fantastic. So
something awesome with Cheap Ass Gamer is I believe if you go on their actual website, which is cheapassgamer.com, you'll be able to find like a hub with all of the Black Friday ads. So and they also, in the past years, I don't know if they've done it recently, but they would do a spreadsheet and it would have, you could just search on the game that you want and it would show you the lowest price for that Black Friday week. And it would show you like, all right, well, here's where, but nowadays it's very different, because it used to be like, all right, well, I have to go to Best Buy for this. I have to go to Amazon for this, or Target for this. Now it seems like one retailer will come out with a deal and the other ones will just match it. So you can kind of do
more
like
or
dealer's
less
choice.
Yeah.
Like if Amazon has, like if, say like everybody puts out, all right, Call of Duty is going to be $40 on Black Friday, and then Amazon comes out, it's like, it's going to be $30 at us. Everybody else will just like match that, basically, is how it often works.
You might as well, you know, why not just try to get the business if it's all going to go that way. And now people are so savvy, they can do that quicker. So it's like, you really do have to take advantage.
Oh, definitely. So those are just some very basic tips. I mean, Wario64 and Cheap Ass Gamer are going to be your best friends during any kind of deal seeking that you're doing, especially on the gaming front. But there's also a ton of other websites. I don't know if Slick Deals was one that I used to be on all the time, and that's just like a general like deal seeking on the internet type of community. I don't know if that still exists. I mean, it literally has been 10 years since I've been on that site, probably. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just all kinds of great resources out there for if you're looking for a great deal.
That is super helpful, sir. Thank you. I'm sure our listeners appreciate that as well. But you know, forget about the listeners for a second. It's more about me right now.
Yes.
This is like a Scott kind of issue here. Scott's got to figure out what to do with his money.
All right.
And hopefully it helps other people too, right?
Let's figure it out.
But you guys got to ride my coattails. Anyway, so a couple games that I'm thinking of, and hopefully I'm now naming all new games for 2022 is, so I'll start with Horizon Forbidden West.
Yes.
That's one. Lego Star Wars, The Skywalker Saga. That was another one on my radar. And Gran Turismo 7.
All right, so
those were like
Gran
the top
Turismo.
3 as far as deal wise that I saw this year. Obviously, there's other games, but some of them don't really have deals.
What are the prices that you're seeing for those 3 games?
So the lowest that I saw, and I didn't get to do a deep dive into it. Again, I would defer to all of the recommended resources that Brian just highlighted. But I saw I saw all 3 of these games for $35 at like the lowest.
I mean, Horizon seems like the clear winner in that group.
I feel like it is too, and it's kind of the one I was leaning to the most out of those 3, just in general. Because I had played the first one at the start of the year, or at the end of last year, is a little bit of both, I think. So, I was kind of prepping for this, and I always knew, okay, it got good reviews and everything. I believe it's one of the Game Award finalists for Game of the Year, correct? Am I wrong?
I would have to look that up.
That's all right. While you look that up, I can say, that was one thing I was thinking about kind of all year, and I was kind of saying, okay, I'll just wait. I'll get it at the end of the year. Of course, God of War took over. I beat that. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, that was like the big thing that I was waiting for all year. So now we're here, and yeah, I feel like I'm leaning towards that. The thing with Gran Turismo for me is that I think they're fantastic games, And my kids love watching me play racing games now. So I'm finding like if I want to play a game in front of them, racing games is like a really good like sweet spot to get in, especially a game like Gran Turismo, because there's not like questionable material in the game, you know?
Yes, I will say this Gran Turismo, unless it's been drastically improved from its launch state, because I reviewed it at launch.
Yeah.
It had a very questionable economy. Like, it was very, like, casino-based in terms of, like, the stuff that you would get for rewards. And also, it was lacking in content. So,
well, that's obviously that would be an issue.
All that stuff
the content is
improvable over the course of a game's life cycle, especially nowadays, where they can just release patches and major updates. Like, I mean, look at No Man's Sky. We've talked about that before.
Sure.
It's like, that's such a comeback story.
I have a feeling that's not the case here.
I don't know. Like, let me look up like what the Gran Turismo community is saying.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I mean, nonetheless, that's a game that, like I said, it's kind of on my radar or something I can play in front of them. But then another game that I can play in front of them, and this one I think they might even enjoy even more, is the Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga.
Yes.
So
100%.
I love the Lego games. I love the Lego games, and I like to play them with my wife too. Like we used to play them back before we had kids. It was a lot easier. So this could be a game that maybe in the evenings when we're kind of like, I don't know, what should we do? Let's watch a sitcom. Like maybe just for a half hour we play like a Lego Star Wars episode.
Yeah, well, those are great because it's the entire saga from episode 1 all the way up to episode 9.
Yeah,
and for the ones that already existed, which I believe was episode 1 through episode 7, because I don't think they ever made Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker Lego games.
No, so because I'm a Lego game aficionado. I don't know how much you played them, but I've played almost all of them.
Yeah,
so I can tell you that they obviously they had released the original trilogy. They had released the prequel trilogy, I believe, separately.
Yeah.
And then they'd also released a combined of all of them. No, they didn't combine them. No, that's not true. No, they released them separately. And they also have the one solo game for Force Awakens.
And the Clone Wars.
And Clone Wars, that's true too. But that's not in here.
That's not in here.
That's separate entirely.
There is, so the Skywalker Saga is episode 1 through 9, and they remade all of them. It's not just like a compilation. They remade all of them from the ground up with uniformed controls, and it's more of like a third-person action game now, more than like the kind of the isometric style that these Lego games have typically been.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so like the camera is often behind the character instead of like top down.
Kind of like God of War.
I mean, yeah, if you want to draw that, I would say closer to like something like a Crash Bandicoot would be like in those levels where he's running.
So you wouldn't say it's exactly the same as God of War. Okay, I'll adjust my expectations.
You do hit and shoot things and they explode in a mess, but it's typically a little bit less bloody in Lego Star Wars.
Well, that's a no deal for me then. I want my Lego Star Wars to have super blood.
Yeah, it's rated M for mature for blood, gore, drug use, and sexual content.
One of those things will probably keep me from playing in front of my kids. No, we're teasing, of course. Yes, I don't know. Like, I feel like I really am leaning toward Horizon, like you suggested.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm in a good sweet spot. You played at least some of that, right?
Yeah. And I think that, I've played all 3 of these to some extent. Lego Star Wars would be the best one for family.
Sure.
But like if you're wanting to play something with your kids or whatever, like Lego Star Wars is the clear winner. But if you're just wanting a game that you can get lost in for hours upon hours, it's going to be absolutely beautiful. It's going to flex the muscles of your PlayStation 5. That's Horizon Forbidden West.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking for your fix after finishing God of War, you're like, I want another like big old adventure with like, amazing visuals and big set pieces and fun action. Then yeah, Horizon Forbidden West. But for all the other reasons, Lego Star Wars.
I feel like too, because that game came out in February and I've waited so long for it, like obviously, I can be patient. I've waited this long, but at this point it's like, I might as well kind of just bite the bullet. Some of these games are a little newer. I think Gran Turismo was more the spring, right?
Yeah, it was like late spring, early summer, I want to say.
Yeah, it was, but it wasn't like high on my list of things. It was just like I saw it at, like I said, all three of these games we're talking about are listed at $35 at the lowest that I found anyway.
Maybe, Lego Star Wars. Lower, Lego Star Wars was April, so they're all kind of in that same time frame. Horizon maybe
was
it
April? Oh man, I thought it was more recent than that. Time flies, man.
Yeah, it's
funny. I waited this long, and this was the one that I've kind of been like watching all year. I also have seen Skywalker Saga, especially on like PlayStation Plus. I've seen it like be on deals, so I have a feeling if I wait a little longer, I'll get a real good deal on it.
I would imagine. I mean, any of these probably, because Horizon's one of those games where it's starting to reach a certain age where like first party titles start going on deeper and deeper discount.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that any of these really, I mean, I think Gran Turismo feels like the furthest from getting a pretty big price cut, because those games typically hold their value, which is weird because this one's one of the less well-received ones.
I'll tell you what, though, and you kind of bring up a good point with kind of the idea of these first-party titles, right? The first-party titles, I feel like, are the ones that if you're a PlayStation Plus subscriber, you at least have to think about the possibility of, are they going to eventually make this available to me with my PlayStation Plus subscription? They do that a lot with, like I mentioned before, as a past year, Ratchet and Clank. They've done that before with Ratchet and Clank. They've done it before with some of their other fantastic first party titles. Bloodborne was a that's not technically first party, but it was a PlayStation exclusive.
It was published by Sony.
That's true. I guess that's true. Developed by Bandai Namco or Namco Bandai, and Anyway,
developed by From Software. So
thank you.
Bandai Namco publishes all the Dark Souls games.
That's what it is. I mix up everything with them, man. It gets confusing for me on the outside now because I'm not covering it anymore. So, but thank you, appreciate. You have to think like, man, if I'm gonna buy this game now, and am I gonna play it now? Like, am I gonna play it this moment, or can I wait until? Hey, maybe it is available now. Maybe now is the time to jump in and I can just claim my game and be like, okay, I saved some money. I got it for something else that I'm going to play. So.
And I will say that if you are not opposed to digital games, keep your eyes on all of the digital storefronts, because a lot of these platform holders will be holding deals for this week on like their digital storefronts, like the Xbox, the PlayStation, the eShop. All of them will be having deals like that. And if you play any kind of like games that require microtransactions, whether it's something like my dumb Marvel phone game or all the way up to Overwatch 2, I would imagine a lot of them also hold like microtransaction sales as well. I know that the Marvel game has been teasing like, hey, here's like the Black Friday preview microtransactions. So it's like, even if like you have just like a daily player that just uses a lot of microtransactions, like they'll often have deals in those games as well. So digital is not ruled out for these sales as well. It used to be that people would go to like brick and mortar stores just because they would not be able to get deals on like these digital storefronts. Like it would be like, oh, well, buying a game off Xbox's dashboard or Xbox's game store never goes on sale. It's always the MSRP. Nowadays, that is not the case. Like back when I was in college, I would go to like Sears to buy games because it was like, oh, well, they will have sales on Black Friday. Nowadays, like sometimes the sales on the game stores, like the digital game stores, will be even better than the ones in the physical stores.
Yeah, and I'm glad you actually mentioned that too, because it reminded me of the fact that I have a running list of things I just wish list if they end up on deals, mostly to keep an eye on them. It's not like I want every single game, like gotta have it, but I'm waiting to see if I get the right deal. Maybe I will strike on my PlayStation Plus account, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at the PlayStation Store just as we're speaking right now, and I'm just going to highlight a couple of the deals on games, and this is both this year and past years that I'm seeing for myself that I'm also thinking about. Skywalker Saga, by the way, is actually $30 on PlayStation Plus. It is cheaper digitally. That makes me think a little bit more.
Tilts the scales a little.
It does. The thing with that game though is I want like that. I want what would be the deluxe edition for it, but I'm also willing to just buy the regular game and then eventually buy the DLC.
Sure.
And I think that could save, a little money if I go that route. I'm looking at, from last year, Jurassic World Evolution 2.
Would you play that on a controller or would you want to play that on PC? For me, like simulation games, I almost always need to play them on PC.
I typically had been that way, but I played Jurassic World Evolution 1 on my PlayStation 4. I played the heck out of it. I really enjoyed it. I got used to playing it that way, and I thought it was perfectly fine. Okay. I had no problems with it. I kind of surprised myself with that, sir. That was the funny thing. That's $24 if you have PlayStation Plus. So that's a really good deal.
Yeah.
And then I see Horizon Forbidden West is actually $40 digitally, so it's a little cheaper if you buy the physical copy.
Yeah, it looks like Nintendo hasn't listed their eShop sales just yet because I went onto my
wish
list.
Waiting for them, man. Yeah, because I like my Nintendo games to be digital. I don't like to change cartridges.
Mm-mm. Yeah. So I'm looking on my wish list right now, and everything is still full price except for one game. So I do the same thing on my Nintendo eShop wish list. Is like, all right, there's like 50 games I want to keep an eye on, and then you can just scroll down, and also they'll even email you saying like a game that's on your wish list is on sale. Here's what it is, and you can go and like see what it is, and like oh well, this collection that I've been keeping an eye on is on sale. And yeah, it's really convenient in that way, but. Yeah, I'm not seeing any real discounts just yet, but I would imagine that's going to be coming either by the time this recording hits our listeners or shortly thereafter.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and so that's really where I'm at for like me personally. There are some other games that I'm looking at, maybe for myself, but really more for like other people I know. If they might be interested either to recommend it or to get it for them. A lot of times sometimes I'm the guy that my friends know, like, okay, you look at games more than I do. What should I get? So I'll help them out with that. But
yeah,
maybe I'll get it from you, and then I'll own it as my own knowledge, and just pretend I knew and cut you out. No one will listen.
Take the
They're
credit.
not going to hear our show anyway. I'm just kidding.
Absolutely take the credit.
But anyway, I'm just going to list these like 5-6 games out of pocket, and then you can kind of tell me where we're at. They're roughly in similar prices, but so Gotham Knights is number 1.
Okay.
Dying Light 2, in no particular order, by the way. Sonic Frontiers, The Last of Us Part 1, the remake, Far Cry 6, and Pokemon Legends Arceus. These are all games that I saw some deals on.
My personal favorite from that list is probably Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Okay.
However, now that's probably going to be discounted because Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are out now.
I see it at 48. That's what I've seen.
Yeah, well, first-party Nintendo games, even though that's like a pseudo first-party Nintendo game because it's exclusive, but it's developed by Game Freak and it's co-published by the Pokemon. But Nintendo does half publish it or they distribute it or whatever.
Yeah,
it's a very complicated relationship.
I know. Yeah,
because like there's 4 parties involved in making a Pokemon game. There's Creatures, which has like a lot of the trademarks on the characters. There's Game Freak, who develops it. There's the Pokemon Company, who owns and publishes it, and then there's Nintendo, who distributes it. It's very complex.
Where does Ash Ketchum come into the picture?
Well, now he's the champion. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah,
he's finally the champion.
Yeah, after 25 years, he finally won the world championship. The 10-year-old, after 25 years. My coworker Kyle.
Is this spoiler warning? Did we just spoil this for people? I don't know.
It was all over media. Like the BBC covered it, and it was like
okay,
it was insane. Like, yeah, I was just on Instagram and like I got a press release and I'm like, I'm not going to write that up. It's kind of like spoilery. But then like literally like CNN, the BBC, like they're all just publishing the stories and like,
oh my god,
I'm like, all right, and like the Pokemon Company and like the Pokemon Twitter account are putting it out on social media, like congratulations, Ash. And it's just
they're not hiding it,
At that point, it's kind of beyond spoiler territory.
Yeah. I was partially kidding. I'm sure they did that because they promote it because they're like, please come watch our show.
I mean, it's on Netflix. It's one of the most popular cartoons on Netflix. So I don't know how much they need the promotion, but
everything helps.
Everything helps. But yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
I would say Pokemon Legends Arceus would be the number 1 pick for me there.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of Far Cry, like most Far Cry games. There's some I don't like, but Far Cry 6 I really liked a lot.
What's a Far Cry game you don't like, actually? I'm kind of curious about that.
Far Cry New Dawn was kind of mediocre.
Yeah, I thought it was all right.
Far Cry 5 was also kind of mediocre.
That was my entry point to the series.
Yeah,
Far Cry 5.
I mean, it's
kind of weird, right?
Fine. But like that's probably my least favorite mainline one since they changed the format like with 3. 3 is fantastic. 4 is incredible as well. 5 was a little lackluster. New Dawn was fun, but it wasn't like, I don't know. It was fun for what it was, which was just like they took themselves a lot less serious in that one, right? And then 6, I thought, was a return to form, and I thought it was a very good story with an amazing cast. I mean, Giancarlo Esposito is the main villain, aka Gus Fring in Breaking Bad, aka God, what's his name in The Mandalorian?
Oh, I know,
aka bad guy in Mandalorian.
Yeah. The name is escaping me, but
yeah, he's a fantastic actor, very, very threatening, I think is a good way to menacing. Yes, menacing is a very good descriptor for his on-screen persona in a lot of these shows and movies.
Sure.
But yeah, I like Far Cry 6 a lot. The other ones were Sonic Frontiers, Dying Light 2. Dying Light 2 is a very good game as well. I think that's
Dying Light 2 is at $20, by the way. That's actually the cheapest of all the games that I listed here. That's a steal at 20. Okay.
That's a huge game. It's one of the, I would say, the unsung heroes of 2022. Okay. Like, if that came out around this time of year and was a little bit more polished than it was when it launched and had a little bit more, not content, because it's such a content deep game.
Okay.
But I think that like people wanted a little bit more from like the side stuff that you could do. And they've done that. They've improved on that since. And I think the first expansion is just about to hit.
Okay. Now, I assume this is a paid expansion, though.
I believe so. I'm not sure. I honestly, it's been such a busy time that like they released it. And I'm like, I can't even devote an ounce of attention to this. I'm sorry, guys.
I understand. I get it, man.
But yeah, that was one of the most impressive games. I remember when I went to E3 2019, which was the last E3 in person, right?
Yeah.
I came away impressed by 2 games, like blown away by 2 games, I'll say. First one was Cyberpunk 2077, because we were looking at the PC demo that was uber polished and, very, very not what we got in terms of the launch state of that game. So I was blown away by that. And then Dying Light 2 was the other game that like was the only other game that was on the level of Cyberpunk at that show, I thought. And, both launched eventually. One came out in 2020, one came out in 2022. But Dying Light 2 launched in a much better state than Cyberpunk did. And it's just it's a really fun game. I highly recommend it.
I don't think did I mention Elden Ring too, by the way, because that also was on the deals.
I think you did.
Yes, Elden Ring is also one of the deals. So just to run down the prices again real quick, because I don't think I included all the prices. Dying Light 2 was $20. You're saying that's a steal at $20.
I think so.
Elden Ring and Gotham Knights are both $35.
Well, so you know which one to go with there. I mean, Gotham Knights, I know you have the DC fandom, but like Elden Ring, right? A lot of people consider that one of the greatest games of the last decade.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to skip personally Gotham Knights. But yeah, so Elden Ring, it kind of goes without saying. Everybody knows that this is like one of these amazing games that people are going to remember and be talking about for a long time.
And also Gotham Knights is probably going to continue to drop because of the reception of that game. So I would feel
it already dropped precipitously to 35 right now. The game it's a month old.
I would bet by 2023 you're going to be getting that for $20.
You mean the start of 2023?
Yeah. That's my prediction.
Okay.
I mean, I think that I think we're going to start seeing it, whether it's like a digital deal, like, hey, we got to get more people playing this game.
Yeah.
Let's just throw it out on like some really crazy discount. Or you just peruse some clearance aisles and happen to see some stacks of, because I mean, you'd have to think that like a bunch of retailers ordered a ton of copies of this game because
and it's just not moving. Yeah.
It's a follow-up to not technically, but it's a spiritual follow-up to the Arkham series. So it's like, all right, well...
And it's Batman, period. I mean, I know Batman's not in it, but it's Batman.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, and I want to play it. I just haven't gotten around to it because I've been buried in Sonic and Pokemon and all these other review games. And I mean, it's a good problem to have. But at the same time, it's like, I want to play these other games. I want to play God of War.
Yeah, that's what you want to play. There's no deals on that, though, unfortunately. I would say
like 2 weeks ago.
My personal opinion is it's a deal at $70 full retail price. but you know what? I understand. So yeah, mention those. Sonic Frontiers I've seen at $29 at the lowest.
That's a good deal. That's a very good deal. Yeah. Get it on PS5 for sure. My personal recommendation is switch it over to 60 frames per second mode instead of 4K mode, and it runs like butter. Like running around as Sonic in 60 frames per second feels substantially better. And also, like, I think there's going to be some patches that are going to make the performance just a little bit better, because that's one of my main gripes about that game is the performance.
Yeah, you were talking about that.
Isn't fantastic. I mean, that's my main gripe for Pokemon, personally. Like, my Pokemon, it's such a fun game, and we can talk about it a little bit later, but like,
we definitely will, and we'll get to that very soon.
It runs like garbage on Switch.
Oh man, that's not good. And that's in docked mode.
Yeah, I mean, it's docked and handheld, really.
But sometimes you can see a performance uptick on docked mode, right?
A little bit, yeah. But like, I think this actually might run better in handheld mode, to be honest.
Get out of here. Interesting. That's wild.
I think it downscales it to 720 instead of 1080.
That makes more sense. Okay, yeah. I just hit me when you said that. That's probably what it was. Far Cry 6 is $31.50. Well, I'm rounding, by the way, to cents here. So,
by the way,
nothing here is $50 or $20 or whatever. It's like $19.99 or $34.99, right?
I do the same stuff when I'm talking about games.
Yeah,
but Far Cry 6, I would say also a steal at that price. But I'm surprised it's not cheaper, because Ubisoft games usually drop a lot faster than that. But like, Far Cry 6 is another, like, I would say Far Cry 6 and Dying Light 2 are very similar. Just, Dying Light 2 takes place in a zombie apocalypse, whereas Far Cry 6 is a fictional island in the Caribbean, and you're leading a revolution against a dictator. And
you could have both of those games for just over $50.
Hey, if you like that type of game, which I do, I love that type of game, which is just basically like a first-person action game with a lot of combat and just a cool story. I think that if that's your jam, drop $50 on those two games, and you'll be set through the new year easily.
That's a good rec. I like that. And then Arceus is $48. I saw on Amazon.
My favorite Pokemon game in a long time.
Okay. Do you like that better? Like, just kind of jumping into the Pokemon thing real quick. I don't want to go all the way there yet, because we're almost done, but I just want to make sure we get this. Would you recommend right now, holiday season, someone buys Arceus for $48 or spends full price on the new Pokemon that just came out?
That's a tricky one, because they are a little bit different. Legends Arceus is not a traditional Pokemon game in that sense, but like, there are a lot of the standard elements. I think I like Legends Arceus a bit more.
Okay.
I think that's my favorite Pokemon game of the year.
And if you can get it for cheaper than the other game, that makes it even more so, right? In theory.
Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are very, very good. They're among my favorite mainline games in a long while.
Okay.
But like, I would wait a little bit for the performance, hopefully, to be improved, but we'll see.
Honestly, that's an interesting rec, though, to tell me, because my wife likes Pokemon games, so to know that maybe Arceus could be a more interesting one. Now, Arceus is not turn based, right?
It is.
Oh, it is. Oh, good. Then okay. Yeah, I was gonna say my wife definitely would be playing.
There are some action. Pokemon. There are some action moments, but yeah.
Okay.
Like there are boss battles within Pokemon Legends Arceus, and you have to like actually fight them, kind of like, basically like you roll out of the way of like these attacks that are coming your way, and then you have to throw like these bombs at them and like calm them down, and then once you calm them enough, then you can throw a Pokemon out to do a turn-based battle.
That sounds like something where if my wife was playing and I was sitting with her, I would take control.
Maybe
because she doesn't like that. It's not because she can't handle it. She doesn't want to engage with a game that way.
Gotcha. So I mean, turn-based battles, I love turn-based battles. Yeah. All my favorite RPGs
honestly,
are turn-based.
I do too. I would prefer more turn-based RPGs be coming out. We just don't get as many of them as I feel like we used to. And, they come, but like that used to be like a big thing, and it's kind of moved back.
Not to go off a tangent too much, but are you a strategy guy, like turn-based strategy?
Sometimes,
like think like XCOM, thinks Mario. I know you've talked about Mario Rabbids that you like that.
And then obviously the new one came out, and that was pretty well received, right?
Oh yeah, it's a better game, I think.
Oh okay, then yeah.
Now, have you kept your eye on Marvel's Midnight Suns at all?
No, I have not really. It seems like
you might want to check that out. It seems
almost like horror-y for some reason. Am I wrong?
Well, it's playing on the supernatural side of Marvel, but like, it still has Tony Stark, it still has Captain America, it has Spider-Man, like
is Wolverine in that too?
Wolverine's in it.
Okay.
But it also has a lot of like the more supernatural characters like Nico Minoru and Magic and Blade. They're all in it as well. Doctor Strange is in it. But like basically it's like a supernatural threat, and all of the Marvel characters are coming together, and it's by the team that makes XCOM. So like it's a very
got a good pedigree.
Yeah, it's got a good pedigree. I mean, I played it before it was even announced. They sent me a Steam build because we had it on our cover, I guess late last year. And I don't know, it was either last year or the year before. I don't know. It all the time blends together in the pandemic, but it was a really fun game when I played it. And I think that it's one that people are going to miss because it comes out in early December. And it's like, everybody, after November rolls around, a lot of people are always just like, all right, well, that's the games that came out this year. But like this December is jam packed. We have Callisto Protocol. We have Marvel's Midnight Suns. There's Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion.
Sure.
There's High on Life, which is the game by Justin Roiland's studio, the co-creator of Rick and Morty.
And we can get more into those games too next month too,
for sure.
Next episode, because we still got time. We got one more episode in before we hit December, so that would be a good one to pick up next week, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, the last one, real quick, just a quick hit here before we get out of the the holiday game deal kind of situation. Here is The Last of Us Part 1 obviously came out, and I think it was pretty well received as far as being a quality game. It was really more of like, did you play the first one and that kind of deal. It's $50 here. How does $50 sound for this type of game?
If you've never played The Last of Us, this sounds like the best way to play The Last of Us.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to justify $50 for this game. I know, like, it's a remake of the first game, which a lot of people consider one of the greatest games of the PlayStation 3.
Sure.
But it's hard for me to justify dropping that much money as a deal on a game.
It's not a decade discount.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's it. You've never played The Last of Us. I know that about you.
I have not.
I think you should experience it, even if you're not a big fan of like zombies and horror and stuff like that.
Sure.
But you've played the Uncharted games. You know that Naughty Dog knows how to make a damn good action game.
I do. And Naughty Dog too. In the original Uncharted game, there was kind of that like sort of horror zombie-ish element. I think we can talk pretty freely about spoilers in a 15-year-old game.
Yeah.
It kind of there's some zombie-ish elements later in the game that, especially my cousin, is not. He's very much not a zombie guy. So when they started coming out near the end of the game, it was all like kind of those the conquistadors or whatever that were like sort of undead. He's like, no, I'm not into this, but he still liked the game anyway.
I wasn't into that for other reasons. That was like, I thought it was stupid, and like,
I also thought it was stupid. It was more of that too, but
it felt dissonant from the rest of the game's tone. Like the rest of the game was like Indiana Jones, but like not like the supernatural side of Indiana Jones, and then all of a sudden it was the supernatural side full force in your face.
Can I tell you that honestly, that's what I feel about. That's how I feel about zombies in general. I just think the whole concept of it is stupid. I think I've seen and I understand that people can use this as like a good narrative element to like tell stories about other things, allegorically and that kind of thing. But or metaphorically maybe, but it's not. It's
Scott.
Like the idea that the undead are doing something. It's just dumb. I can't.
You're thinking about it the wrong way, Scott. It's a metaphor for humanity.
Stop it.
Don't you remember Dawn of the Dead took place in a shopping mall? It's a metaphor for humanity, Scott.
Yes, of course. I've seen some zombies. I saw Night of the Living Dead. I saw that in a film class in college.
There you go. Yeah,
and I understand that these films can be telling other things as they're telling these stupid zombie stories, but I still think they're stupid zombie stories. So,
but yeah, The Last of Us
it's like the bar of entry. I'm just not there.
The Last of Us has a very good take on it, I will say.
Okay, all right, I will keep that in mind. But I also feel like I'm kind of with you. I'm like $50 for a game that it's a remake, like for a game that I wasn't that into to begin with. Like I'll wait. I still bet you eventually that game in particular, Sony's going to be like, here you go. You get it free this month.
I mean, I think The Last of Us Remastered, the PS4 version of The Last of Us, I believe that is on the PlayStation Plus. If I'm not mistaken, it was at some point.
I claimed it. I have that game. That's the other thing too. If I really want to that bad, I don't have to pay any money. I can go pay the original. Yeah, on PlayStation 4 copy. Yeah, so it doesn't matter that much. But all right, that's enough of that. I think we've engaged so much with that. We've put a lot of time in it. Hopefully that helped some people who are like me, trying to kind of figure out what to do with their money. One quick rec too before we move on: Guardians of the Galaxy from PS4 from last year, $20 I've seen it for. That's a steal. That is
also
fantastic game.
That's also available on Xbox and PC. So
yes, thank you. Yeah, I think only in PlayStation, but I appreciate that. Yeah,
it's also weirdly it's available on Switch, but only the cloud version. So you have to have an internet connection at all times. I recommend playing it anywhere else whenever there's just the cloud version.
Sure,
but play.
Some people don't have that though. Some people only have a Switch. So
exactly, if you only have a Switch, that's a good game, and make sure you just have a stable internet connection.
But $20 for that game is just fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. But anyway,
amazing story as well.
I'm sorry, which one?
Amazing story.
Oh yeah, that's exactly why. That's how I like my games, man. I like narrative. I like all that stuff. That's why I loved God of War.
I mean, that's why I think that Last of Us would be up your alley, because the thing that the best zombie media does is it doesn't tell the story of zombies. It tells the story of humans trying to survive these extraordinary circumstances. And I don't think, you'd be hard pressed to find media that does a better storytelling job in that genre than The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2. I know a lot of people kind of hate The Last of Us Part 2 for various reasons. I think The Last of Us Part 2 is just one of those games that's up there with Red Dead Redemption 2 in terms of storytelling.
Okay, that's pretty high praise. But anyway, you've got more Pokemon to talk about from Scarlet and Violet. I'm sure we don't need to go as deep into it as you might on, let's say, All Things Nintendo or in your review. But just for people who maybe missed that for the first time around, let's just talk about this. What was your experience with the game?
So this is the first fully open world Pokemon game ever, at least as far as the mainline RPGs are concerned.
Right.
And they mostly do a good job with it. It's very explorable. There's a lot of great new creatures that you can go and encounter. The big problem is the performance. You'll be running or riding or whatever, however you're traversing this open world, and you'll just see characters phase in and out of existence because they're popping in and out, and it's rough. The frame rate will drop, the characters will phase in and out of existence, and it's just, they have Game Freak. This is their first attempt at a true open world, and they hit a lot of it out of the park, but the performance, they just need to figure that out. Or we need a new Switch. We need a Switch Pro if we're going to have games like this. But
sure.
5.5 years ago, Breath of the Wild was largely able to do a competent open world. It wasn't it wasn't running 60 frames per second by any stretch. And there were plenty of times where I went back and replayed Breath of the Wild a couple years ago, and that still has a little bit of chugging when there's a lot going on in the open world. But all in all, it runs pretty well on the Switch. And that's a 5.5-year-old game running on the base models of Switch.
No, it's true.
Nowadays, it's we should have figured this out by now. We should have had, especially a developer that develops these games exclusively for the Nintendo Switch. They should know by now how to make an open world. And that's the part that is the biggest drag on this. Other than that, though, you could do 4-player co-op, which is great. This is the first time you can ever do that in you're just running around in the open world. And
that is very attractive. The idea of that is very attractive.
And it's not even all right, well, we have to stick together. I fast traveled to the other side of the world, and I was able to keep playing. And my coworker was all right, I'm just going to keep catching and battling Pokemon over on this side. And that was fun. And then we could also take part in raid battles together and things like that. So it does a lot of stuff really well. It does 3 diverging, or not diverging, but 3 different storylines that you can go to. So there's one that's, all right, battle the gyms, which is the traditional Pokemon storyline.
Sure.
There's one where you're chasing down these Titans, which are just kind of these overgrown Pokemon in search of this mystical herb that is growing in these caves. And then there's
people love a mystical herb, I'll tell you.
Yeah, mystical herb Dean. And then there is a third one where you're taking down the team. Every Pokemon generation has a team, whether
Team
it's
Rocket,
Team Rocket,
Team whoever, yeah,
Team Flare, whatever. And this is Team Star, so you're basically assaulting their bases. That's the storyline of that. There's 5 bases you have to go around or 4 bases, I don't know. There's 5 Titans, 4 bases, 8 gyms that you have to go around, and those are the things you can do in the open world. And then also exploring the open world, finding these different Pokemon. I guess we can say how many. There's roughly 400 Pokemon in this game to catch. which is a pretty substantial number. I mean, there's over 1,000 Pokemon in the national Pokedex now,
right?
Which is like the entire series. But this is the game that eclipsed the 1,000 mark, which is wild to think about. I remember back when there was 151 back in 1998.
I feel like if pressed with a gun to my head and you give me 24 hours, probably much less, but just, give me a little time because I got a gun to my head, I think I could come up with all 151 of the original Pokemon.
Wow.
Top of my head. I think I could do it.
God. I don't know. I mean, I probably could eventually. I don't know if a gun to my head would really help the circumstances.
Fortunately, it's probably not going to happen. This is a scenario that I feel like is unlikely.
Well, give me a gun and a plane ticket, and I'll be right there.
No, I don't want to do that.
Then don't.
All
right. Well, you came up with a scenario, dude. I'm just trying to help you live out your dreams.
This
I don't know what kind of sick fantasy you have, but I'm naming Pokemon as fast as I can.
I got this. Just give me a day.
But yeah, so Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, very good games, hindered pretty drastically by their performance, but the stories are surprisingly good. The one where you're searching down it's called Herba Mystica, I believe it's called, where you're fighting the Titan Pokemon and you're helping this classmate of yours because the backdrop is you've joined this school and there's classmates that you're helping out on these quests. And he has a particularly good story. I've never really been super touched emotionally by a story in Pokemon, but this one kind of hit me a little hard. That's
surprising to hear, to be perfectly honest.
And I've talked to one of my coworkers and he brought it up unprompted. He was like, yeah, that storyline's actually really touching.
So it wasn't just you going through some stuff and maybe, having all your feels when you're playing the game.
I think this is a pretty universal story for people who are not heartless.
Okay. I like that. I don't think I'm heartless. My children probably love me.
I mean, let me ask you this, Scott, without spoiling a whole lot.
Yeah.
Have you ever owned a pet?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Then yeah, this will hit you.
I grew up with when I say dogs, I mean one dog at a time, but I had dogs for most of the first 34 years of my life.
Then yeah, I think that this will be an affecting story for you.
Mm-hmm. Shout out especially to my dog Reggie. My parents had a dog when I was born, and she was my dog too. Tara was a good dog, but Reggie was my dog.
I get that. Yeah.
Reggie became I got her in middle school, and she met my children who were born after I turned 30.
Wow.
So she lived a good long life, and she was the goodest dog.
Good for her. I am glad you had a dog like that. Let's talk some fighting.
I just want to say real quick before we go to fighting is that I did finish God of War, like I said. I love it. We'll talk more about it next week. I can give you more deeper thoughts when we got a little more time to do so. And probably by then I'll have finished all the end game stuff. But it really was just fantastic.
Game of the year for you?
I mean, I haven't played much, but it was probably gonna be hard to beat anyway. And I think it absolutely fulfilled. Put it this way, it fulfilled my expectations. I don't know that it necessarily surpassed them. I think it met them. I think that was fair.
I mean, that's what my coworker told me when he was reviewing it. I was just like, how is it? And he's like, it meets my expectations, which were very high.
Yeah. So, but I don't think it goes above and beyond. There were moments, and I'll go deep into it next week, but there were moments where I was like, you know what? This is okay. I'm into it, but it's not going crazy on me yet. But through it's good. It's good. We'll say more for next week.
Is number 2 for you Shredder's Revenge?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But again, my exposure to new games is pretty limited. Like I said, I'm talking about a couple games from February, April that I didn't play that I'm thinking about buying. So,
all right. Well,
I do want to play Stray before the year's out, and okay. I want to play. This is probably why I'm going to end up buying Horizon Forbidden West. Is I want to play that too for the year's out, if I can, and then I'll have played a couple of the Game of the Year nominees. Kind of thing, so I can actually talk about that to some degree. Because I'm not gonna. I'm just not interested in Elden Ring. I'm just not. I know people love it, but
I want to get back to it. Like I really do.
I don't, and that's fine. That's fine. But yeah, let's go to fights, man. We've got to squeeze in some fights here. We don't have so much time left in today's show due to some time constraints in our lives. But yeah, let's go to here, and I want to start on Bellator's side, to be perfectly honest, because we'll get to why I don't want to talk about UFC as much later. But Bellator. First off, were you able to watch it? Because it's always the discussion of, do you have access to it because you have Paramount Plus, but you don't have Showtime anymore? Were you able to watch it?
No, because I decided to have a date night instead.
What a loser! Out with a girl instead of watching men beat each other up.
Yeah, well, what do you do? Like I don't know, like, and then UFC. I mean, we're talking Bellator now, but UFC. I was just like, I don't need to even let this occupy a moment of my brain space. Aside from like,
I would have saved the date for Saturday.
Yeah. Well, we had a party on Saturday.
That's fun. That's fun.
We went.
But so you weren't able to watch, but you don't know if you had access to watch it or not, is what you're saying.
I have no idea. That's a testament to Bellator. This is the one card that I would have wanted to try for, I guess.
Okay.
Especially these top two fights.
Yeah.
But I just it's been like 4 months since like Showtime and Paramount Plus combined, and I have not tried once. Like I'm looking at
they've had fewer cards, to be fair, in that time, but yeah, that doesn't speak highly of your interest in that.
I'm looking at my subscription list, and Paramount Plus is so close to like the chopping block right now.
Sure, no, I get it. It's not. It wouldn't be high on my list either.
I was like, I want to watch a couple of things that are on there, and then I'm severing ties with Paramount. I think it's like I want to see A Quiet Place Part 2. I still haven't seen that. I want to see that new horror movie Smile, and then I want to rewatch. I own the Sonic movie, so I don't need to save my Paramount Plus subscription for that. But there's like a few things on Paramount Plus that I want to save, and then it's just like, yep, goodbye.
I'm much more interested in Paramount Plus for the nostalgia content.
Yeah,
like Legends of the Hidden Temple and Nickelodeon Guts, which I've shown my kids before. I actually have gone back and shown them, and they enjoy those shows, by the way. I think they're universally still fun, even if you watch today. And then
Nick
they're
Arcade
like,
was fun.
What's a VCR? It's like, because that's one of the prizes you get to win, right?
At least they know the word VCR, because I hear most younger people nowadays call it a VHS player.
No.
Like, we're so used to that because like DVD player, Blu-ray player, CD player, MP3 player. So it's like kind of like become like the universal lexicon.
Yeah.
But so I've heard a lot of younger people. I've even caught myself saying it before, where it's like I grew up with VCRs, but like I hear myself sometimes say, "Oh yeah, like growing up I had a VHS player." It's like, wait, no, I didn't. I had a VCR.
No, you're talking to the wrong people. I'm teaching my children right. I'm raising them right,
good.
And they're going to know what a VCR was.
They're going to know what a Laserdisc player was.
I mean, I've shown them VHSs. I've still got a couple VHSs around somewhere. They don't do anything. They're more decorative, but yeah. So let's circle back here. Right? Let's get this back on track. You weren't able to watch, so no. We can't really discuss too deeply the fights, but I can tell you that Vadim Nemkov really impressed me in defending his title. I don't think many people really, especially after the last one, there were much fewer people who believed in him getting the job done against Corey Anderson. It looked like Anderson was on his way to a victory.
Oh, he absolutely was.
Unfortunate circumstances with the clash of heads ended the fight like about just like 10, 20 seconds before the fight would have become official, because it just needed to start the fourth round, and it was at the very end of the third round. And so they couldn't go to the scorecard, so it was just a no contest. If it gotten there, Corey Anderson wins that fight, and he wins the championship and $1 million. Here, he couldn't bring it down. Vadim Nemkov showed much better takedown defense and stamina in keeping the fight where he wanted. Great performance by him. Honestly, Bellator's had some not very great success with some interesting fights in their main events, and I will say this was kind of a lopsided fight, but it was also it was a pretty solid fight. I think it was still entertaining, and that's one thing that they've unfortunately had some bad luck with this year, but I think they got it here.
Is this one of those things where they need to do a trilogy fight? Because the first one, while not an official win for Corey Anderson, he was seeming like he was on his way to a win. Vadim Nemkov, he won the second one. Do they kind of say like, all right, well, Corey Anderson unofficially won the first one. Vadim Nemkov officially won the second one. Do we need to do a third one?
Not right away. This would not be an immediate, like, let's do it a third time. There's no demand for it. I don't think it needs to happen. But I don't know that we need to write off the idea of Corey Anderson going back in there and getting another shot at him with maybe another win or two.
But aren't we doing Yoel Romero next against Vadim?
Yes. Which sounds that is next.
That could be great, or it could be a Yoel Romero fight and garbage.
Look, that's just the way Yoel Romero fights. God. You have to understand that when you go into a Yoel Romero fight, you are hoping for the best, but prepared for the worst. It's the price of entry. You got to know what you're coming in for with him, because it could be great, but it could be a total waste of your 25 minutes.
It could be Robert Whittaker, Yoel Romero 2, or it could be Israel Adesanya, Yoel Romero.
Yes.
Either way. It could go either way. Or it could just be the Luke Rockhold fight, and it's just like
over
awful.
Quickly. That's the other thing. He has a lot of good finishes. And I think him fighting at 205 here, the way he is, Yoel, I think it's a much better home for him. I think he's able to probably save more of his stamina.
I still have no idea how he ever made 185.
Use more of his energy, I could say, because he's not depleting his body like ragged. He has not written off, by the way, the idea of going to middleweight. He has not in any way written that off. We'll see how his 40-plus-year-old frame decides to do that. But right now, obviously, we're only focused on 205. But while we're still on 205, here's an exercise I wanted to go for you. Let's just do lightning round style. Like, do even first reaction. You don't have to go deep into it. But I want to know how you feel about this, and I'll answer as well. UFC and Bellator, honestly, their top fives are not that far off in terms of the rankings. And by rankings, I'm going with Fight Matrix, because they're one that go very deep in terms of the number of fighters they will rate. They're numerical, and it's easy to get 5 Bellator, 5 UFC guys up there. So here's how we're doing it. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yuri Prohaska against Vadim Nemkov, and this is a rematch, by the way.
Yeah, Vadim won
7 years ago,
right?
in Rizin, Nemkov lost.
He lost.
TKO. No, he lost. Prohaska won TKO retirement after the first round. 10-minute first round in Rizin, by the way.
Gotcha. I mean, I'd love to see it, but I think Yuri, he is just a force, right? Like, he just comes forward and throws everything at you. Like, he's like a 205 Justin Gaethje ever since he's come over to the UFC, right?
He thrives on the chaos. I think that's true. I think you have order versus chaos in this fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that does make it, I think, very interesting. Yeah. And both of them can strike, and I think, it's not that Nemkov can't be aggressive. I think here he was actually pressing. He was pretty aggressive in the way he approached things, but I still think that it's very much like you have somebody who's trying to keep it more of a technical fight versus someone who's trying to muck up the waters, right? And that can make for a fantastic fight sometimes. Especially stylistically. So yeah, I like the matchup. I like the idea of it. We're obviously thought exercise here. These aren't happening, but yeah, what's your gut?
I'm gonna say Yuri.
My gut says Yuri too, but I do think if the fight goes a little deeper, I'm curious to see if maybe I don't know.
But hey, I think a lot of people said that about Yuri Glover, and look what happened.
Classic round, absolute classic.
Yeah, and also 5th round submission for Yuri Prohaska over Glover Teixeira, which nobody saw coming.
Nemkov doesn't have like an amazing gas tank either. By round 4 of this fight over the weekend, his mouthpiece was just like falling out at will. It's like, come on, keep it in. Anyway, that's one fight. Let's do a little more lightning roundish for these last ones. I'm glad we talked about that one because that's the good one, right? But the other ones here, they're interesting, but it's a little different. Jan Blachowicz versus Phil Davis. Gut says what?
Probably Jan.
I think I would say Jan too, but man, Phil Davis, I mean, the wrestling and the mix of kicks, I could see him winning. I
just really like Jan.
Oh, sure. I mean, he's a likable guy. Glover Teixeira against Corey Anderson, and this, I believe, is a rematch, isn't it?
Oh, my God. I mean, it's hard to imagine that they didn't run into each other.
That's the thing with Anderson and Davis too. I mean, both these guys are UFC veterans, so they actually existed at the same time.
So Corey Anderson beat Glover Teixeira by unanimous decision in July 2018.
Yeah,
but Glover's on this resurgence now.
Sure.
And Corey Anderson has leveled up in a lot of ways, right? Like, I would probably say Corey Anderson, but like, I don't know.
My gut says Corey Anderson would too. Yeah.
That's my pick anyway.
Because I think as long as he's able to survive early on, you will see Glover fade, and Corey Anderson would still be there, and I think he would get the takedown. So yeah, I would favor him too. So right now we have 2 UFC, 1 Bellator. Okay. That's what the rivalry is at. Magomed Ankalaev against Yoel Romero.
Gut says what? Ankalaev.
I would favor him too.
I think Ankalaev's coming for that belt, honestly.
This would be such a boring fight, though. Can I just say, this would be like one of the worst fights on paper, I think, that you could possibly make stylistically, because it would be, I bet you, a 5-round fight, and we'll treat these as 3, and the Prohaska Nemkov would be a 5-rounder. But if this was 5 rounds, I predict a cumulative 35 strikes landed.
Here's what you got to do. Dana White and Scott Coker, best of friends.
They love each other.
Have them come together. Each of them throws $500,000 in a pot for a total of $1 million. Mm-hmm. And you tell these 2 guys, look, you're going to get your show and win. But this $1 million goes to you if you finish the fight.
How about first one to 100 strikes or a finish wins?
Because then they'll just spam jabs.
They'll just strikes spam landed. Jabs. You know what? Jab in MMA hits hard. These guys hit hard. Fine. I
mean, look at Ryan Spann. He knocked out Dominic Reyes with a jab.
Yeah.
But dude, I'm saying
jabs in MMA are different than jabs in boxing. They hit harder.
You got to throw Yoel Romero and Magomed Ankalaev a $1 million finish bonus.
They definitely need something sweetener.
Then you'll get a fun fight out of those 2 guys.
I think you're right. But I'm with you. I think Ankalaev would win that one. And last one, Jamal Hill against Davlechin Yakshimuradov.
I'm going Jamal Hill because I'm so high on that guy.
Very high on him too. I would also pick him.
Yakshimuradov, I've seen him fight only a couple of times, but he's impressive as well in his own right. But
he's got some wrestling too, and I think that would be the interesting, like, the kind of nugget here. That's like, how does Jamal Hill do against that?
I mean, I think
I still think he passed the test, but it does make it actually a little more interesting than it like almost sounds on paper, I think.
And every round starts standing is the old adage, right?
Of course.
You know, that's the trick there for Yakshimuradov.
But honestly, like, we're talking about matchups that on the whole are at least interesting. I think
they're competitive in every single one.
I feel like 205 is Bellator's best chance at having a division where they would be competitive with the UFC.
Well, because Bellator has a good 205 division and UFC has a mediocre 205 division overall.
I mean, relative to their other ones,
yeah.
I think it's fair. I mean, but obviously, we're still talking about we still gave them 4 out of 5 wins. But
yeah, that's just because UFC is on a different level than Bellator.
Agreed.
Like, Bellator used to be the consensus number 2 organization to the UFC.
I think they still are.
But it's competitive a lot of people
now. PFL there. It is, but it also isn't. Like, there's a lot of metrics that support that Bellator is still very far ahead.
I think so. I don't think very far ahead, but I think that in terms of, like, I don't know, man. Like, this just hasn't been a good year for Bellator.
It's been a rough year in terms of the fight quality. We talked about that already, but yeah. No, you're not wrong.
But then you have this man over here at the co-main event, Usman Nurmagomedov. From all accounts, it seems like he is going to be a force in that division.
I think so too. He absolutely dominated Patricky Pitbull, outclassed him, won every round. Round 2 was almost assuredly a 10-8 for most people, including 2 of the judges. It was that he had Patricky Pitbull in a rough place in that particular round. So he looked fantastic. I think this was the one that on paper looked much easier to predict. Like, a lot of people we were saying were kind of favoring Corey Anderson. I don't know how many people out there at all thought that Patricky Pitbull was going to win outside of the Friday family.
And then you see poor Patricky Pitbull waiting 5 hours in the hospital with his face just completely open and bleeding all over the mask that he's wearing. Like,
he was not thrilled with the Illinois commission there, and
Patricio was the one that was not thrilled. I'm sure they both weren't thrilled.
I've not heard the greatest things about the Illinois Commission in general, from fighters, from people who've dealt with them. I've had limited interaction with the people over there, but I will say that I have a project I've been working on where I'm trying to gather old scorecards for data collection, for judging, that kind of thing, because that's kind of my thing, right? And they were the head of the commission wrote back to me when I inquired. But rather than do what almost every single other commission did, which was just here you go, we have it, or sorry, we don't have it. They're like, here, fill out a FOIA. And I'm like, I don't want to do Freedom of Information Act. Like, I have to wait. I mean, I'll do it. Like, I did it and it was fine, but it's like, you can't just provide it to me. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
That was annoying. Obviously what Patricky dealt with was, I would say, much less humane.
5 hours at least with an open wound bleeding all over his face.
That's garbage. That's just hot garbage. So I'm not thrilled with that.
God, that's such a shitty way to treat fighters. I don't even know. Like, why is that a thing? I understand there's like a doctor shortage and like the emergency rooms are. I mean, I just spent 5 hours, or I guess 7 hours, in an emergency room, 4 of which was waiting. My girlfriend was extremely sick a couple weeks ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And 4 hours waiting and then 3 hours in the room itself. And it's like, yeah, I get it. Like, the rooms are very, very packed and everything, but like, there's got to be a doctor.
My son was in the ER too for a while too.
They've got to have a doctor on hand for these events to like stitch somebody up, if nothing else. Like, if you're going to send him to the hospital, great. Have somebody on hand who can stitch him up so he's not bleeding all over his damn face while he's in the ER waiting.
It's a bad look too. Like, it just is a bad
who
look.
could have foreseen there would be a cut or some sort of gash on a human face in an MMA competition,
especially one involving a Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, I did like. I think it was the co-main event guys say it's the other pit bull against the other Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, I guess so. Hey, give him time. Maybe he'll become the Nurmagomedov.
But yeah,
it's very early in his career.
What a year for Coach Khabib in the lightweight division, especially.
Fantastic year, and yeah, like he's got the champion in from Dagestan, like his family or his like friends that are family. He's got Islam Makhachev ruling in UFC. He's got Usman Nurmagomedov ruling in Bellator,
both of which look like they could be champion for a bit.
And that's the question. I mean, how long do you think before one of these Dagestanis gets knocked off? And maybe which one?
Let me phrase this to you, kind of flip it a different way.
Yeah.
Which 155 Khabib coached fighter gets dethroned first?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm thinking about here. Yeah. It's twofold. That's one of them.
I think that Islam has a better
Islam
chance.
would have a harder time keeping the belt longer because it's just such a shark tank there. But having said that, I mean, there are threats in Bellator too. I mean, AJ McKee would be of interest there. I would like to see how someone like Tawfiq Musayev would do against Usman too. There's some really interesting guys here, and don't forget there is the Bellator lightweight Grand Prix coming up. So it's going to be a lot of interest in the lightweight division in the coming year. So we'll see if he's able to get out of that. But I do think, I think it would be much harder for Islam to hold on to it. Just because the level of competition is higher.
But that said, Islam looks like a wrecking machine. And I mean,
the question, that's the other question. How long can they hold on to this thing? I mean, like, are we talking about these two for years to come? Like,
I mean, we saw what he did to Charles Oliveira, who had already dominated, or at least finished much of the top of that lightweight division. And then Islam came in and there were barely any competitive moments in that fight.
I would argue that even if both of these men are active over this time, I think they could each hold on to the belt for the next 3 years. And that's a really bold prediction, I understand. I mean, a lot of people may not think that's too bold, but 3 years to have a title is a very long time.
Yeah.
To just predict it, that's hard.
Especially if you're an active champion.
Kamaru Usman only held the belt for 3.5 years. Think about how dominant he was.
Yeah, how long was Izzy champion? Because that's another one who was just extremely. I mean, was that like
similar length? It was similar length. I think he won the interim belt a month after Kamaru Usman won the regular belt.
Yeah,
and in his weight class. Yeah, so they both emerged in the same spring.
What a wild year it has been for UFC championships. Like, can we just say, like, especially like we talked about,
we're not done.
We still have a Yuri Glover 2 on the horizon here, but like 3 very, very surprising finishes in the 5th round where the title changed hands all 3 of those times.
Just wild. Like, I'm going to have a lot of fun going through these fights for the MMA JA awards that we do. But let's switch over to UFC and let's keep this brief. 1, because we don't have a ton of time left, and 2, because it's just not that interesting a card. Let's talk about UFC Vegas 65. Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivak. I mean, no, that was gone. That one eliminated itself midway through the event. Derek Lewis got hurt, in illness. He suffered an illness, non-COVID illness, non-weight cut related illness per the UFC. So we ended up with instead Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Ion Cutelaba as our 3-round main event. Let's start with, how did the main event fare against expectations? Well, since we expected Derek Lewis and Sergey Spivak to fight and they didn't, I would say it didn't do very well. So I'm going to go. I mean, it was much worse than expected.
Well, it depends on your perspective of what a heavyweight main event can be.
Could it have been worse?
Although,
yeah, I guess it could have been.
To be fair, Derek Lewis, if he's in a main event, it usually doesn't go 5 rounds.
As long as he doesn't fight Francis Ngannou, it's usually at least decent.
That was a 3-round fight, thank God.
I'm just saying in general.
The only reason that's not worse than Carla Esparza Rose Namajunas 2 is because it was only 3 rounds.
True.
But I mean, I've seen a lot of the finishes from this fight, or from this card, which, there weren't a ton of them. But I saw Ion Cutelaba get finished by Kennedy Nzechukwu. I saw that finish. That was a beautiful finish.
Good comeback too, because he was not winning the fight in the first round, but then he comes back because you can't count this guy out. That was kind of the narrative coming out, and I think it's deservedly so. He's a resilient guy.
I saw the King of Kung Fu, his spinning back kick into the punches.
That was fun. Spinning wheel kick. Yeah, it was a good one.
And then Natalia Silva, though.
Starting off the card, yeah.
That was a finish right there. Holy crap. And then poor Teresa Bleda, I guess is how you'd pronounce it.
I missed the pronunciation.
Got a throat kick, basically. Good God. It wasn't an intentional throat kick, but she was going for a takedown right when Natalia Silva was throwing her kick. And good Lord, did it land in a vicious fashion.
These things happen in MMA, sir.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. At least no one's ripping out throats. That is illegal. That's only allowed in the movies.
But it sounds to me like Jack Della Maddalena is the star of this fight night.
Absolutely. Honestly, I think it would have been fascinating if they just said, you know what, let's put Jack Della in the main event when they had to scramble, rather than moving the fights up. If they just said, hey, look, we've got a chance to feature a star here. Let's just put him in the main event. If it was me, I think I would have pivoted to do that if I had the contractual ability to do it. Maybe, who knows? Maybe there's different things written into the UFC language. I have a feeling it's not, and they can do whatever they want because that's typically how they write these contracts. But nonetheless, I would have done that. But yeah, he looked fantastic. I think a lot of people expected him to, and he just delivered on that. He's definitely the one who comes out of this event with the most shine. Absolutely.
So I think those are the highlights of this fight night. I don't think there's a ton more to break down, but
I will tell you the experience of watching Charles Johnson versus Jalga Zumagulov.
Oh, I heard it was abysmal.
Oh, it was terrible. It's so the typical fight. If you go to ESPN Plus and you look to pick individual fights, right? It'll tell you how long the video is, and not just the fight, but the video itself. And usually it's 21, 22 minutes. Maybe if there's a foul,
the walkouts and everything.
Well, they don't typically have
the
walkouts.
Introduction. Sorry, not the walkouts.
Well, the intro's always a minute and a half. I watch a lot of these, so I know to skip the first 90 seconds and then just get into it. But yeah, so you allow for it to be 21, 22 minutes. If there was a foul, maybe it'll be a little extra longer. This was 29 minutes long. So there was a lot of fouls and a lot of time spent between them on the fouls. So it was an interminable wait. The fight itself wasn't awful, outside of all the sloppy fouls and stuff. It was okay. But man, Jalga Zumagulov, he has the worst luck. He lost a split decision for the second time in a row. He had lost a unanimous decision in his UFC debut that a lot of people felt that he should have won. I talk about judging all the time. I think all of these fights could have gone either way. But the point is, he's now 1-5 in the UFC and could easily be 4-2.
Well, did he retire?
Zumagulov?
I thought so.
Did I miss that?
Did I hear that?
I must have missed that if that's the case.
Let's see.
I hadn't heard that, sir.
Zhalgas Zumagulov has called it a mixed martial arts career after back-to-back controversial losses inside the octagon. Is MMAmania.com.
Look.
MMA retirements.
I'm going to take this with a lot of salt. This isn't just a grain. Or I don't know. I mean, I'm probably butchering the exactly, whatever it is.
By the way,
nonetheless,
we have a week where we don't have any UFC. Yes. But just looking ahead very, very briefly, because I just wanted to see what's next on the docket for UFC. We have a banger of a fight night in 2 weeks in Orlando.
It is a good one. The headliner is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson against Kevin Holland. It's deep, but man, we are getting short on time here.
Yeah, all I wanted to say was if you feel discouraged and you feel like we're on a UFC pay-per-view hangover this week, just wait until the next fight night because it seems like it's going to be a little bit redemptive unless it completely falls apart, which can happen for sure.
Of course. And speaking of pay-per-view, we do have pay-per-view mixed martial arts this weekend. PFL is dipping its toes in. Well, actually, they're jumping in full with the price of their $49.99 pay-per-view for their championship event. And granted, this is, look, if they're going to charge for pay-per-view, it better be the one that has all the stakes on the line. It's, $6 million, $1 million to each champion, right? Kayla Harrison, of course, at 155 pounds is the headliner, but it's the third match for her against Larissa Pacheco. She beat twice previously 3 years ago. That's where our headliner is here. But I'm going to ask you, sir, before we even get into how you feel about paying and that kind of thing, let's go to the 6 title fights here. And I want you to rank them. So you're looking at the list. Why don't you... We're not going to list them now. You'll just kind of name them for me. Like, what's your level of interest? What's number 1?
It's either going to be Brendan Loughnane and Bubba Jenkins.
Okay.
Maybe Stevie Ray and OAM.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards Stevie Ray and OAM. I think that actually could be an interesting fight.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, man. Like, the rest of them, I either don't know the fighter, like, flat out, or it seems like it's going to be kind of one-sided or boring. Like, Kayla Harrison versus Larissa Pacheco, we've seen that fight twice before.
We have, but you know what? Since then, Pacheco has won all 5 of her fights by first-round TKO or KO. She's looked really good, so 3 years is a long time to develop your skill set, and if she's already on, like, that big a roll, I wouldn't count her out.
You know what? I'm more excited for the non-title fights here. I'm more excited for the Shaman Moraes versus Marlon Moraes. I'm more excited for the Nathan Schulte versus Jeremy Stevens. I'm even more excited for Magomed Karamov versus Gleison Tebow.
I want to see how Aspen Ladd does against Julia Budd, because first off, she's fighting at a weight class that she ought to be fighting at. And Julia Budd is a former Bellator champion. She's actually a legitimately very good, very well accomplished 145-pound woman.
Yeah, fair enough. Like, I think that would be again, that's not a title fight though. So yeah, all the non-title fights are more exciting than the title fights to me.
All right, well, let's tell you what. I'll rank my interest in these fights, in these title fights here. So I'll start with Stevie Ray against Olivier Aubin-Mercier.
Sure,
that's lightweight. Number 2, yeah, I think I would go the featherweight one as well. Brendan Loughnane against Bubba Jenkins. I think Loughnane in particular tends to find himself in, let's say, some more interesting fights for let's say, PFL.
Unless it's Dana White's Contender Series, in which case he shoots for a takedown with 10 seconds left, and Dana White says he's never going to sign him.
It has become a more profitable endeavor for him ever since. So yeah. I think these things tend to work themselves out for some.
Wait, he's not fighting for 10 and 10?
No, he's not fighting for 10 and 10. That's the funny thing. And then I would say after that, I'll go up to light heavyweight because I kind of expect there to be a stoppage, or not say a finish here. Omari Akhmedov against Rob Wilkinson. I think that could be fun for as long as it lasts. Yeah. I would say Delano Taylor against Sadibou C at welterweight. That's my number 4. I'll say Kayla Harrison versus Larissa Pacheco, number 3 still, because I do find some interest. I am curious to see if we could see Pacheco leveled up, maybe give Kayla Harrison some more problems, or conversely, maybe Kayla Harrison comes in there and wants to get the finish she wasn't able to get the first 2 times, because this was the first woman who survived her both times, wasn't finished. So there's something there.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Do you think Marlon Moraes, right?
Yeah.
He coming off a pretty awful streak in the UFC, retired.
And he's now up at 45. Yeah, he retired. He's back now.
He was supposed to fight Shane Burgos. I think this is a much more favorable matchup for him than Shane Burgos.
It's a distinctly more winnable fight on paper, yeah.
If this goes poorly for him, do you think he calls it quits again?
I don't know. It's hard. I mean, what's his mindset? That's kind of the question. Is what is he trying to do now?
But like,
because
it feels
he already
like
retired. So
it feels like late career fighters, right? Fighters who have one foot out the door. They have two things that they usually view as friends, right? They either see a change in weight class or a change in fight promotion as like, oh, this is where I get my career right. And Moraes is doing both of them in this fight. He's changing promotion to PFL and he's changing weight class to featherweight. If this goes poorly for him, is he just like, all right, well, then nothing is going to set me right. Like he's also a pretty heavy favorite in this, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know what the line is. I mean, I would favor him too because he won the first time. This is a rematch from.
Yeah.
Actually, they fought in World Series of Fighting. They had since moved on to the UFC, had UFC runs, and now they are back in the same organization, which is now called PFL. And here we are. It's a very, and they're both called. They're both surnamed Moraes, no relation. It's kind of a strange journey for them, but I don't know. I'm not in his head. It's a really hard thing for me to predict. I don't even feel comfortable making a call there. But I will say I would also say the last championship fight is at heavyweight. Ante Delia against Mateus Scheffel. It's heavyweight. I'm never very interested in, let's say, not the elite of the elite heavyweights in the world, and these two are not that. So
I'm not seeing any odds. Hopefully, it ends.
Look, I want my heavyweight fights to be 1 round long. So if it ends in inside of 5 minutes, I'll be happy.
I think we should have them all be 5 rounds. Every heavyweight fight, 5 rounds.
You're an agent of chaos, sir.
And change them to 10-minute rounds instead.
I'm gonna say a 10-minute round might be okay because then probably get it done quicker.
One of them will collapse by the end of that first round.
Maybe in minute 6 they would. Yeah, exactly. They can't go to their corner and get their inhaler like Greg Hardy.
So we haven't talked about the one thing that is the most important part of this card, which is the price
point.
Yes,
the price point, $49.99.
Oof.
Yeah, that's the question I have for you. Is this worth your $49.99?
No. Are you kidding me? I wouldn't
even close.
I mean, $10 would be the most that I would consider paying for this.
Wow.
The PFL Championship. So here's the thing. I subscribe to ESPN Plus because I want to watch the UFC.
Sure.
If PFL was on anything that I didn't already have a subscription for, I would not drop any amount of money for it.
It would just be like Bellator for you, which is you skip it anyway.
Yeah. So, like, the fact that they're like, all right, well, the only reason I pay attention to PFL, aside from the fact that, there's sometimes good MMA there, is that it's on a service that I already subscribe to.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they want me to pay more for it, I don't care that there's 6 title fights or whatever it is. Like, they want me to pay more money for this, and there's just no reason that I would go out of my way to pay extra for this. Like, I barely want to give them my time, let alone my money. So,
wow. Yeah, all right.
The fact they're charging $50, get the hell out of here.
Yeah,
like, that is one of the, I mean, maybe they're testing the waters to see who would drop money for this. Maybe it's ESPN mandating it. Who knows? Maybe ESPN's like, no, we want to charge more. But
if I had to guess, it's probably more related to their investors and trying to justify the investments they've made in the organization over the years.
Yeah, let me know how that pans out for the investors, because this is going to sell like fewer than 5,000 buys.
I'll bet you it's more than that. I would be willing to bet it's actually more than 5,000 buys.
The only thing
we'll never know that number. If it's 5,000 or less, we'll never know.
The only things they have going for them, the fact that there's no UFC card this weekend, and it's happening the day after Thanksgiving. So maybe people have some family over staying at their house and they say, hey, there's some fights on. You guys want to pitch in for a pay-per-view? And they get some like crowd-funded buys where people are just bored and their family members are driving them crazy. And they're like, hey, maybe if we put some blood sport on, that'll distract from the blood sport that's happening in this household as we have our uncle talking about politics again.
I guess the one thing that I didn't get to look into is this running up against college football, or is college football like kind of over by the time this is happening? Because like, if there's not college football, if it's not really going against too much on Friday night, then maybe it has a chance, to kind of break through in sort of the circumstance you're talking about. But also, if there's a lot of people over, maybe they're just saying, let's just throw on college football. So,
well, you have a few games on Friday. One of them
Anything
is on
high
Friday
profile.
night.
I know you're probably not a big college guy, but like you
Florida
probably know at
versus
least some of
Florida
the schools.
State.
Yeah, there's some interest there, I guess.
Yeah, and then earlier in the day you have UCLA, California. The biggest game of Black Friday appears to be Tulane versus Cincinnati. So that's 19 versus 21. But I mean, Florida State's
and that's
ranked
not
16.
a marquee. It's a high rank game, but it's not a marquee game.
Yeah, obviously, Saturday is going to be the big day for college football. Thursday is going to be a big day for NFL. Is. So
So as far as the price point goes, I think they're in this weird world, right? They can't just offer it. They wouldn't do $10, right? I know you're throwing a number out, but like they couldn't do $10 because they're saying I understand. They're saying if they're offering for $10, we're saying our product is just not worth that much money, but they're trying to justify it being something. Like it is what it is. I'm just saying from their perspective, and I'm not saying that it should be $50. I wouldn't have if it was up to me. If I was in the room and they said, "Hey Scott, what do you think we should charge for this?" I wouldn't have said $50.
Here's what you need.
I think probably somewhere. I think $40 would have actually, even $45 would have just sounded better. It just would have sounded better. UFC pay-per-views way back used to be $35 and then $45 and $50 and then it was $50 for a while. Then it started, obviously it's crept up. Now we're at $75
every single year now.
Yeah.
If you want,
I bet you we're not going to have it this year. I'm making like a little like bold prediction here. I don't think we'll have a raise in the UFC price next year. I think it'll be 2 years from now. Next winter.
It's whenever
January
Conor
24.
McGregor fights again, they'll just boost the price again because that's their excuse, and then it just never comes back down.
That's part of it too.
If they wanted to charge $20 to $30, that would be a good sweet spot for a pay-per-view for PFL, if and only if they were able to get a big marquee fight like a Kayla Harrison versus Cyborg.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is we're missing like a key factor here. Is like this just isn't a fight that anybody is demanding.
Exactly.
You need that for pay-per-view. And yes, the stakes are high here. There's intrigue there. But also, this is something you got for free last year. It's just, it's tough. And honestly, losing Shane Burgos, it's not like Shane Burgos is a pay-per-view draw. I like Shane. I get along with Shane too. But nonetheless, it's just not what we're... There's no marquee here. You need Cyborg. You need a big fight to sell pay-per-view. This is not a big fight, and I do think they're going to look back at this and say, okay, this probably didn't work out as well. That's just my prediction. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm interested in the affairs of it. I always like the idea of the meritocracy working itself out and somebody winning $1 million at the end, as long as it was earned. I mean, unfortunately, we've had injuries have happened over the years. We lost
visa issues.
What's that? Yeah, visa. We have a lot of issues, right? We lost a few in the playoff stage, but even I think the biggest loss was at 205, where we lost Shoeface Antonio Carlos Jr. because he's the defending champion. I think he's inarguably the best 205er on paper in this weight class, and it would have been interesting. There's some intrigue here too because he is a teammate and friend of Amore Akhmedov. Imagine if they had to fight each other. That would have been a fascinating fight.
It's a real Warrior the movie situation there.
Yeah, a little bit. But that was unfortunate. He blew out his knee too. So you hate to see that.
I mean, well, as Bellator, as PFL, as any other organization that has ever done tournaments has found out, injuries will throw a wrench into all your best laid plans. That's going to be a big issue for PFL. Is there unless your name's Daniel Cormier. Their reliance on their format is both a strength and a weakness, and I think we see that play out pretty much every year. But yeah, so it'll be. I wonder what kind of engagement they'll get at $50. I feel like they went in at the wrong price, but I mean, if they go in too low, I get it too. It's a tough thing. So I don't know, but I think we probably hit a bunch. We got to roll too. We both got some things to get going in our days, but I hope you enjoyed this show. And if you liked it, make sure you subscribe and tell a friend that we are on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. We're everywhere. Like, just look on wherever you get your podcasts. Search for us. You'll probably find the Ground and Poem podcast.
while you're at it, would you kindly follow our social handles at Brian P. Shea and at Scott_Fontana on Twitter and Instagram. And we're growing. We're on other profiles too. We'll get those another day.
Yeah. And if you want to reach us with questions, feedback, topics you'd like to hear about, or just letting us know what you are hyped for, hit us up at groundandpwnedpod@gmail.com or at groundandpwned on Twitter. Until next time, enjoy the fights, enjoy the games. We will talk to you next week.